It was one of those evenings where everything seemed to go wrong from the start. The rain had been pouring down all day, turning the streets into rivers and making everyone miserable. For Maria, a 42-year-old mother of two, this was just another Tuesday that felt like it would never end. She had already worked 8 hours at her morning job, cleaning hotel rooms downtown. Her back ached from bending over beds and scrubbing bathrooms, but there was no time to rest. She had exactly 30 minutes to grab some groceries before starting her evening shift at the convenience store on 5th Street. That's just how life was for her. 2 jobs, barely enough sleep, and always racing against the clock. Maria pulled into the grocery store parking lot, her old car making that weird knocking sound it had been making for months. She kept telling herself she'd get it fixed when she had extra money, but extra money was something that only existed in her dreams. Between rent, her daughter's asthma medication, and her son's school expenses, there was never anything left over. She grabbed her purse and rushed toward the store entrance, her worn sneakers splashing through puddles. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the sky was still gray and heavy. She was mentally calculating how much she could spend, maybe $30, enough for bread, milk, some pasta, and if she was lucky, a small pack of chicken. That's when she nearly stepped on it. A brown leather wallet was lying face down on the wet pavement. Right next to one of those shopping cart return areas, Maria stopped in her tracks. She looked around quickly. The parking lot was almost empty. Just a few cars scattered here and there, but no one was walking around looking for something they'd lost. She bent down and picked it up. The leather was wet but expensive looking, the kind of wallet that cost more than she made in a week. Her heart started beating faster. She knew she should look inside to find out who it belonged to, but part of her was afraid of what she might find. Taking a deep breath, Maria opened the wallet. Her eyes went wide. The wallet was stuffed with cash, not just a few $20 bills, but thick stacks of $100 bills neatly arranged. Her hands started shaking. She glanced around again, suddenly feeling like someone might be watching her, thinking she was stealing it. She moved closer to her car, using it as a shield, and carefully started counting. 100, 200, 500. The numbers kept climbing. When she finished, she had to count again because she couldn't believe it. $4,200 cash right there in her hands. Maria stood there in the drizzle, staring at the money like it was some kind of miracle. Do you know what $4,000 meant to someone like her? It meant she could pay her overdue rent. She was 2 months behind, and her landlord had been calling every other day, his voice getting angrier each time. It meant she could buy her daughter's inhaler without having to choose between that and groceries. It meant maybe, just maybe, she could fix her car and stop worrying about it breaking down on the highway. Her mind was racing. No one had seen her pick it up. No one knew she had it. She could just keep it. Who would know? Whoever lost it was probably rich anyway. They had $4,000 just sitting in their wallet like it was nothing. They probably wouldn't even miss it that much. But even as these thoughts rushed through her head, Maria knew what she had to do. Her parents had come to this country with nothing but the clothes on their backs and a dream. They had worked in factories, cleaned houses, did whatever it took to give her a better life. And the one thing they had taught her, the one thing they had repeated over and over, was to always be honest. Always do the right thing, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. She looked at the wallet again. Behind the cash, she could see credit cards and a driver's license. She pulled out the license and looked at the photo. Robert Chen, age 54. The address listed was in Riverside Hills, the fancy neighborhood on the north side of town where houses had 3-car garages and swimming pools in the backyard. Maria let out a long breath. Of course the person who could afford to carry around $4,000 in cash lived in the richest part of the city. Meanwhile, she was trying to figure out how to make $30 feed her family for a week. But it didn't matter. The money wasn't hers. It belonged to Robert Chen, and she was going to return it to him. She got into her car, the wallet still in her hand, and pulled out her phone. She'd have to call her manager at the convenience store and tell him she'd be late. He wasn't going to be happy about it, but this couldn't wait. She typed the address from the license into her phone's GPS. 23 minutes. It would take her 23 minutes to get to Riverside Hills. She started the car, that knocking sound louder than ever, and pulled out of the parking lot. The groceries would have to wait. Work would have to wait. As she drove through the rain-slicked streets passing from her worn-down neighborhood into increasingly nicer areas, Maria tried not to think about the money. She tried not to think about her overdue bills or her daughter's medicine, or the leak in her apartment ceiling that the landlord refused to fix. She just focused on the road ahead and doing what she knew was right. She had no idea that this simple decision, this choice to return something that didn't belong to her, was about to change her life in ways she could never imagine, and not in the way she hoped. The drive felt longer than 23 minutes. Every red light seemed to last forever. Maria kept glancing at the wallet sitting in her passenger seat, almost like she was making sure it was real. Part of her still couldn't believe this was happening. Why today? Why her? Out of all the people in that parking lot, why did she have to be the one to find it? She thought about her daughter, Sophia, who was probably home right now doing homework at their small kitchen table. Sophia was only 10 but already so responsible, so mature for her age. She had to be. When you grow up watching your mom work 2 jobs just to keep a roof over your head, you learn things fast. You learn that life isn't fair. You learn that some people have everything while others have to fight for scraps. And then there was her son David, 15 and angry at the world. He didn't understand why they had to live the way they did. Why his friends had new phones and gaming systems while he wore hand-me-down clothes. Why they could never go on vacations or eat at nice restaurants. Maria worried about him. She worried that he'd make bad choices, that he'd look for shortcuts to get the things he wanted. What kind of example would she be setting if she kept this money? What would she tell her kids about right and wrong if she became a thief the moment an opportunity presented itself? No, she knew better. She was better than that. Her mama didn't raise a thief. The gates of Riverside Hills looked even more intimidating up close. Maria had driven past this neighborhood before, but she'd never actually been inside. It was the kind of place where people had security guards and cameras everywhere. The kind of place where someone like her didn't belong. She pulled up to the guardhouse, her old car sputtering and making that embarrassing knocking noise. The security guard, a young guy in a crisp uniform, looked at her car and then at her with raised eyebrows. She could see the judgment in his eyes. What was someone driving a beat-up car like that doing in a place like this? Maria rolled down her window. "Hi, I need to see Robert Chen. I found his wallet and I'm returning it." The guard's expression didn't change. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, I just told you. I found his wallet. I'm trying to return it to him." The guard looked skeptical, like he thought this might be some kind of scam. He picked up his phone and made a call, keeping his eyes on her the whole time. Maria felt her face getting hot. She wasn't doing anything wrong. She was trying to do something good. So why did she feel like a criminal, after what felt like forever? The guard hung up and pressed a button. The heavy iron gate slowly swung open. "Take the second left, then third house on the right. Number 47. Maria drove through slowly, looking at the massive houses on either side of the street. These weren't just houses. They were mansions. Perfect lawns, fancy cars in the driveways, fountains and statues in the front yards. This was a different world. A world where people didn't have to work 2 jobs just to survive. A world where losing $4,000 was probably just an inconvenience, not a disaster. She found number 47 and pulled into the circular driveway. The house was huge, all modern glass and steel with a 3-car garage and a perfectly landscaped front yard. There was a Mercedes and a BMW parked in the driveway. Her car looked like a joke next to them. Maria grabbed the wallet and got out. Her hands were shaking again. She didn't know why she was so nervous. She was doing the right thing. She walked up to the front door and rang the doorbell. It made a fancy chiming sound, nothing like the buzzer at her apartment building. The door opened and a man stood there. He was in his 50s, wearing expensive-looking casual clothes, the kind that probably cost more than her monthly rent. His hair was perfectly styled and he wore a watch that gleamed gold on his wrist. This had to be Robert Chen. "Yes?" he said, looking at her with confusion. Maria held out the wallet. "Hi, Mr. Chen. I found your wallet in the grocery store parking lot on Miller Street. I wanted to return it to you." Robert's face changed. First surprise, then relief. He took the wallet from her hands and opened it immediately. But instead of thanking her, he just stood there counting the money, right in front of her, like she was a suspect in a crime. Maria watched him count, feeling more uncomfortable with each passing second. She'd expected maybe a thank you, maybe even a smile. Instead, he was treating her like she might have stolen from him. Finally, Robert looked up. "It's all here," he said, but his tone wasn't grateful. It was cold, almost suspicious. Maria forced a smile. "Of course it's all here. I wouldn't take your money. I just wanted to make sure you got it back safely." Robert's eyes narrowed. "How do I know there wasn't more? Maybe you took some before bringing it here." The words hit Maria like a punch to the stomach. She felt her face go red, but this time it wasn't from embarrassment. It was from anger and hurt. "I didn't take anything from your wallet, Mr. Chen. I found it and I brought it straight to you." "And how do I know you didn't photograph my credit cards?" "People do that, you know. They take pictures of the card numbers and then use them online." Maria couldn't believe what she was hearing. She had driven all the way across town, made herself late for work, done the honest thing, and this man was accusing her of being a thief. She could feel tears starting to burn behind her eyes, but she refused to cry in front of him. "I didn't photograph anything," she said, her voice shaking. "I was just trying to do the right thing." Robert looked her up and down, taking in her worn clothes, her tired face, her cheap shoes. She could see what he was thinking. He was thinking that someone like her, someone who obviously didn't have much money, couldn't possibly be trusted around someone else's cash. "Well," he said finally, "I suppose I should say thank you, but you understand my concern. You can't be too careful these days, that was it." No real gratitude, no acknowledgement that she'd gone out of her way to help him. Just suspicion and condescension. Maria felt something break inside her. She'd been struggling for so long, working so hard, trying to do everything right. And this man, who had more money than she'd ever see in her lifetime, couldn't even show basic decency to someone who'd just done him a huge favor. "You're welcome," Maria said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. She turned and walked back to her car, her legs feeling shaky. Behind her, she heard the door close. Not even a goodbye. She got into her car and sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. The tears came then, hot and angry, streaming down her face. She wasn't crying because he hadn't given her a reward. She'd never expected one. She was crying because of how he'd made her feel. Small, untrustworthy, less than human. She wiped her eyes and started the car. The clock on her dashboard told her she was now 40 minutes late for her shift at the convenience store. Her manager was definitely going to be angry. She might even lose this job, and she couldn't afford that. All because she'd tried to do the right thing. As she drove back through the fancy neighborhood past those perfect houses and perfect lawns, Maria felt stupid. Stupid for thinking that doing good would somehow be rewarded. Stupid for believing that people were basically decent. Stupid for not just keeping the money when she had the chance. But even as she thought these things, she knew she wouldn't have done it differently. Because at the end of the day, she still had to look at herself in the mirror. She still had to face her kids and be an example for them. And no amount of money was worth losing her integrity, her sense of who she was. Still, it hurt. It hurt more than she wanted to admit. By the time she got to the convenience store, she was 55 minutes late. Her manager, Tony, was waiting by the door with his arms crossed. He was not happy. "Where have you been?" he demanded. "I've got a line of customers and no one at the register." Maria took a deep breath. "I'm sorry, Tony. I found someone's wallet with a lot of money in it and I had to return it. It took longer than I thought." Tony's expression softened a little, but only a little. "That's nice and all, Maria, but I can't have you showing up late like this. We've talked about this before. I know, I'm really sorry. It won't happen again." "Make sure it doesn't," Tony said, walking back inside. "Get your register started." Maria followed him in, putting on her work vest and trying to push the whole awful experience out of her mind. She had to focus. She needed this job. She couldn't let Robert Chen's rudeness mess up her life even more. But as she rang up customers and bagged groceries for the rest of the night, she couldn't stop thinking about it. About the way he'd looked at her. About the way he'd accused her without even knowing her. About how unfair it all was. She had no idea that this was just the beginning. That her simple act of honesty was about to become something much bigger than she ever imagined. And that by tomorrow everyone would know her story. The next morning, Maria woke up exhausted. She'd barely slept, her mind replaying the whole scene with Robert Chen over and over. The way he'd looked at her. The way he'd made her feel like a criminal for doing something good. She tried to shake it off as she made breakfast for Sophia and David, but the hurt was still there, sitting heavy in her chest. At work, she mentioned what happened to her coworker, Patricia. They were cleaning rooms on the 5th floor of the hotel, and Patricia could tell something was bothering Maria. "You okay, girl? You've been quiet all morning," Patricia said, stripping sheets off a bed. Maria sighed and told her the whole story, about finding the wallet, returning it, and how Robert Chen had treated her like she was trying to scam him. Patricia's eyes got wider and wider as Maria talked. By the end, she was furious. "Are you kidding me? You returned over $4,000 and he accused you of stealing? What kind of person does that?" "I don't know," Maria said quietly. "I just keep thinking maybe I should have kept it. At least then all this trouble would have been worth something." "Don't say that," Patricia said firmly. "You did the right thing. He's just a jerk who doesn't deserve your kindness." She paused, pulling out her phone. "You know what? I'm putting this on Facebook. People need to know about this." "No, Patricia, don't. It's not worth it. I'm not using his name or anything. I'm just going to say my friend returned a bunch of money and got treated like garbage. People should hear about this stuff. Maybe it'll make someone think twice about how they treat others." Maria wasn't sure it was a good idea, but she was too tired to argue. Patricia typed up a quick post during their break and hit share. Maria figured maybe a few of Patricia's friends would see it, and that would be that. She was wrong. By lunchtime, Patricia's phone was blowing up with notifications. The post had been shared 50 times, then 100, then 500. People were commenting, sharing their own stories about being treated badly when they were just trying to help. The post was spreading like wildfire. "Maria, look at this," Patricia said, showing her the phone. "It's everywhere. People are so angry about what happened to you." Maria felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of her was glad that people understood how she felt, but another part was nervous. She didn't want this kind of attention. She just wanted to forget the whole thing and move on with her life. But it was too late for that. By the end of the day, the post had been shared thousands of times. Local news outlets had picked it up. Someone from Channel 7 News had even called the hotel, asking if anyone knew how to reach the woman in the story. The manager took a message and gave it to Maria at the end of her shift. "They want to interview you," he said, handing her a slip of paper with a phone number. Said something about a viral story. Maria stared at the paper like it might bite her. "I don't want to be on the news." "Might be good for you," her manager said with a shrug. "Never know what could come from it." That night, Maria sat at her kitchen table with the phone number in front of her. Sophia and David were in the living room watching TV. She could hear their laughter, and it made her think about why she'd returned the money in the first place, because she wanted to teach them that honesty mattered. That doing the right thing was important even when it was hard. Maybe telling her story would do that on a bigger scale. Maybe it would remind people to be kind to each other. Maybe something good could come from all this pain. She picked up her phone and called the number. The reporter, a woman named Jennifer, was kind and professional. She explained that they'd seen the story online and wanted to give Maria a chance to tell her side. No pressure, no gotcha questions. Just her story in her own words. Maria agreed to meet her the next day. The interview took place at a small park near Maria's apartment. Jennifer and her cameraman were set up on a bench with the trees in the background. Maria was so nervous she could barely sit still. She'd never been on TV before. What if she said something stupid? What if she froze up? But once Jennifer started asking questions, it felt more like a conversation than an interview. She asked Maria about finding the wallet, about her decision to return it, about what happened when she got to Robert Chen's house. "Why did you return it?" Jennifer asked. "You mentioned you're working 2 jobs. That money could have made a real difference in your life." Maria thought for a moment. "Because it wasn't mine," she said simply. "My parents taught me that you don't take what doesn't belong to you, no matter how much you need it. And I have kids watching me. What kind of example would I be if I told them to be honest, but then I wasn't honest myself? How did it make you feel when he accused you of taking money from the wallet?" Maria's voice got quiet, like I didn't matter, like because I don't have much money I must be a bad person. It hurt more than I expected. The interview lasted about 20 minutes. Jennifer thanked her and said the story would air that evening on the 6 o'clock news. Maria went home and told Sophia and David to watch. They all sat on the couch together as the story came on. Seeing herself on TV was weird and uncomfortable, but her kids were amazed. "Mom, you're famous," David said, his eyes glued to the screen. Sophia hugged her tight. "I'm proud of you, Mama." That made it all worth it. For a moment, Maria forgot about Robert Chen and his cold eyes. She forgot about being tired and stressed and broke. She just felt the warmth of her daughter's hug and knew she'd done the right thing. But she had no idea what was coming next. Because while she was watching the news with her kids, thousands of other people were watching too, and they were getting angry. Very angry. By the time the sun came up the next morning, Robert Chen's entire life was about to be turned upside down. Robert Chen had always been a private person. He'd built his real estate business over 25 years, made millions, and kept his personal life out of the spotlight. He liked it that way. So when he woke up that Thursday morning to 17, missed calls and dozens of text messages, he knew something was very wrong. The first message he opened was from his business partner, Alan. "Have you seen what's online? Call me ASAP." Robert's stomach dropped. He opened his laptop and typed his name into Google. What he saw made his blood run cold. The story was everywhere. Wealthy real estate developer accuses Good Samaritan of theft. Woman returns $4,000, gets accused instead of thanked. The articles all had the same details, the same story, his story, and even though most of them didn't use his full name, it wasn't hard to figure out who he was. Someone had found his business website, his LinkedIn profile, his company's Facebook page, and people were angry, really angry. His company's Facebook page had hundreds of new comments and none of them were good. "This is how you treat honest people? I'll never do business with someone like this." Disgusting behavior from someone who has so much. His business email inbox was flooded. His phone kept ringing with numbers he didn't recognize. Robert sat at his kitchen table watching his carefully built reputation crumble in real time. His wife, Linda, had been visiting her sister in Portland when all this happened. She called him that afternoon after someone sent her one of the articles. "Robert, what is this?" she asked. Her voice wasn't angry yet, just confused. He explained what had happened, how he'd lost his wallet, how some woman had returned it, and how he'd been cautious because you never know who to trust. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. "You accused her of stealing from you? After she returned your wallet, with all the money inside? Linda, you don't understand. People try to scam you all the time when you have money. I was just being careful." "Careful?" Linda's voice was rising now. "Robert, that woman did something incredibly honest. She could have kept that money. Do you know what $4,000 means to someone working 2 jobs and you treated her like a criminal?" "I didn't mean to. I don't want to hear it. I'm coming home. We need to talk about this, about a lot of things." She hung up before he could respond. Over the next few days, things got worse. Local businesses started pulling their partnerships with his company. The community center where he'd been on the board asked him to step down. His daughter, away at college, called him in tears because her friends had seen the story and were asking her about it. But the worst part was the stories that started coming out. Employees from his company, current and former, began sharing their own experiences. Anonymous posts on social media about how Robert treated the cleaning staff at his office building, how he'd yelled at a waitress who got his order wrong, how he never tipped the people who delivered food to his office. One story that gained a lot of attention was from a former assistant who said Robert had once refused to pay a contractor for work because he found a tiny flaw in the job. The contractor was a single dad struggling to make ends meet, and Robert had made him redo the entire project without additional pay. Robert tried to defend himself. He had his lawyer draft a statement saying he'd been the victim of theft before and was simply being cautious. That he meant no disrespect to the woman who'd returned his wallet. The statement made things worse. People saw it as him making excuses instead of taking responsibility. The backlash intensified. His business partner, Alan, came to his house one evening, looking tired and stressed. "Robert, we need to talk about damage control. We've lost 3 major contracts this week. People don't want to work with us anymore." "This is ridiculous," Robert said, pacing his living room. "I didn't do anything illegal. I didn't hurt anyone. I just asked some questions." "You humiliated a woman who did you a huge favor. In today's world, that's enough. People care about how you treat others, especially people with less power than you." "So what am I supposed to do?" Alan sighed. You need to make this right. Apologize. Publicly. And not some lawyer-written statement. A real apology. Find that woman and make amends. Robert wanted to argue, but he knew Alan was right. This wasn't going away. If anything, it was getting bigger every day. When Linda got home 2 days later, she barely looked at him. She unpacked her bag in silence while he tried to explain everything again. Finally, she sat down across from him at the kitchen table. Do you remember where I came from, Robert? He nodded. Of course. My mother cleaned houses for rich families. My dad worked in a warehouse. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with 4 kids. I know what it's like to struggle. I know what it's like to work yourself to the bone and still not have enough. I know that, Linda. Do you? Her eyes were hard, because the man I married 20 years ago would never have treated someone the way you treated that woman. What happened to you, Robert? When did you become someone who looks down on people just because they have less money? Robert didn't have an answer. He sat there feeling smaller than he had in years. I want you to fix this, Linda said, not because of your business, not because of your reputation, but because it's the right thing to do. Find that woman. Apologize to her face. Mean it. And if you can't do that, then maybe I need to rethink some things about our marriage. She stood up and walked to the guest bedroom, closing the door behind her. Robert sat alone in his kitchen, the silence crushing. He'd spent his whole life building wealth, building success, building an image, and now it was all falling apart because of one moment of suspicion and pride. He pulled out his laptop and searched for the news story again. He watched the interview with Maria, really watched it this time. He saw the hurt in her eyes when she talked about how he'd made her feel. He saw a tired woman who'd done something good and got punished for it. For the first time, Robert felt genuine shame. He needed to find her. He needed to make this right. But he had no idea where to start. She'd never given him her last name. The news stations wouldn't give out her contact information. He was stuck. Or was he? Robert picked up his phone and started making calls. If he'd learned anything in business, it was that there was always a way to solve a problem. You just had to be willing to do what it took. He was finally ready to do the right thing. He just hoped it wasn't too late. 2 weeks had passed since the interview aired, and Maria's life had become a strange mix of normal and completely bizarre. She still worked her 2 jobs, still struggled to pay bills, but now people recognized her at the grocery store. Strangers would stop her to say they'd seen her story and that she'd done the right thing. Some even offered her money, which she politely refused. Patricia kept showing her comments and messages from people all over the country who'd been inspired by her story. Teachers were using it in their classrooms to talk about integrity. Churches mentioned it in their sermons. Maria didn't know what to do with all this attention. She just wanted to return a wallet. It was a Tuesday evening, and Maria was working. Her shift at the convenience store when a well-dressed woman walked in. She looked out of place among the usual customers buying lottery tickets and energy drinks. The woman walked straight up to the counter where Maria stood. "Are you Maria?" the woman asked softly. Maria's guard went up immediately. Over the past 2 weeks, a few reporters had tried to get follow-up interviews. "Who's asking?" "My name is Linda Chen. I'm Robert's wife." Maria felt her stomach drop. She hadn't expected this. She didn't know what to say. Linda's eyes were kind, but sad. "I know this is probably the last thing you want to deal with, but I was hoping we could talk. Just for a few minutes, please." Maria looked around the store. It was a slow night. Tony was in the back office. She nodded slowly. "Okay." Linda took a deep breath. "First, I want to apologize for my husband. What he did was wrong. How he treated you is inexcusable. I didn't know about any of this until I saw the news story. I was out of town when it happened." "You don't have to apologize for him," Maria said quietly. "I know. But I need you to understand that the man who did that to you isn't who he used to be. Or maybe he is, and I've just been too blind to see it." Linda's voice cracked a little. "I grew up poor. My parents worked so hard just to keep food on the table. I promised myself I'd never forget where I came from. But somewhere along the way, I think Robert forgot. Or maybe he never really understood." Maria didn't know what to say, so she just listened. Linda reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. Robert wanted to find you to apologize himself, but we couldn't get your contact information. The news station wouldn't give it to us. So I did some detective work. I'm sorry if that feels like an invasion of privacy. I just needed to make this right. She handed Maria the envelope. This is from both of us, but mostly from him. He wrote you a letter. He wanted me to give it to you in person. Maria took the envelope with shaking hands. She opened it and found a handwritten letter on expensive stationery. Robert's handwriting was neat and careful. Dear Maria, it began. I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I need to try. What I did to you was wrong. You showed incredible honesty and kindness, and I responded with suspicion and disrespect. You deserved gratitude, and I gave you accusations. I have spent the past 2 weeks thinking about why I reacted the way I did, and I don't have a good answer. Fear, maybe. Pride, definitely. But none of that matters. None of that excuses how I made you feel. I am truly sorry. You did something good, and I punished you for it. That says everything about my character and nothing about yours. I hope you can forgive me someday, even though I don't deserve it. Below the letter was a check. Maria's hands started shaking harder when she saw the amount. $25,000. I can't accept this, Maria said immediately, trying to hand it back. Linda gently pushed her hand away. Please, this isn't charity. Think of it as the reward you should have gotten in the first place. The reward you earned by being a good person in a world that doesn't always reward good people. It's too much. It's not nearly enough, Linda said firmly. Do you know what you taught my husband? You taught him that there are still people in this world who do the right thing, even when it costs them something. You reminded him what integrity looks like. That's worth more than any amount of money. Maria felt tears starting to form. I don't know what to say. Say you'll take it. Say you'll use it to make your life a little easier. You deserve that. After Linda left, Maria stood behind the counter staring at the check. $25,000. It was more money than she'd ever seen at one time in her entire life. She could pay off her debts, fix her car, get Sophia's medicine without worrying about the cost, maybe even save some for emergencies. But the real surprise came 3 days later. Maria got a call from a woman named Carol who worked for a non-profit organization called Community Hope. They helped families in need, provided job training, ran after-school programs for kids. We saw your story, Carol explained, and we were so moved by it. The thing is, we're looking for a community outreach coordinator, someone who can connect with the people we serve, who understands what it's like to struggle, who has the kind of character we want to represent our organization. Maria's heart started beating faster. What kind of job is it? Full-time with benefits. Health insurance, paid vacation, retirement plan. The salary is $45,000 a year. I know that might not sound like much compared to some jobs, but that's more than I make at both my jobs combined. Maria interrupted, her voice barely a whisper. Carol laughed. Well then, would you be interested in interviewing? Would she be interested? It was like asking someone dying of thirst if they wanted a glass of water. The interview was the next week. Maria was so nervous she could barely sleep the night before. But when she met with Carol and the rest of the team, it felt right. They asked her about her life, her values, why she'd returned the wallet. They wanted to know about her kids, her struggles, her dreams. We don't just want someone who talks about helping people, Carol explained. We want someone who's lived it. Someone who understands. Someone like you. They offered her the job at the end of the interview. Maria accepted, tears streaming down her face. She'd been working 2 jobs for 3 years, exhausted every single day, barely able to spend time with her kids. And now, because she'd done one honest thing, her entire life was changing. She gave her 2 weeks' notice at both jobs. Her bosses were happy for her, even if they were sad to lose her. On her last day at the convenience store, Tony gave her a card signed by all her co-workers. Inside, someone had written, "You prove that good things really do happen to good people. We'll miss you." That night, Maria sat down with Sophia and David and told them everything. About the new job, about the money from Linda and Robert, about how their lives were going to be different now. Does this mean we won't be poor anymore? David asked, his voice hopeful and a little scared. It means things will be easier, Maria said carefully. But more importantly, it means that doing the right thing matters. Even when it's hard, even when it seems like it might cost you something, because you never know what might come from it. Sophia hugged her tight. I'm proud of you, Mama. I want to be like you when I grow up. And that, Maria thought, was worth more than any amount of money. 6 months later, Maria was thriving in her new job. She'd moved to a better apartment. Her car was fixed. Sophia's asthma was under control because they could afford her medicine. David was doing better in school and had even joined the basketball team. She'd seen Robert Chen once since that night at the convenience store. He'd come to a community event that Community Hope was hosting. He approached her nervously, and for a moment they just looked at each other. "Thank you for the letter," Maria said finally, "and for the apology. It meant a lot." "Thank you for teaching me something I should have learned a long time ago," Robert replied. "That kindness deserves kindness in return." They didn't become friends. They probably never would. But there was understanding between them now. A shared knowledge that one moment can change everything if you let it. Maria had returned a wallet because it was the right thing to do. She'd never expected a reward. She'd never expected her life to change. But sometimes when you do good in the world finds a way to do good back to you. Maybe not right away. Maybe not in the way you expect. But eventually, somehow, it comes back around. 2 years had passed since that rainy evening when Maria found a wallet in a parking lot. Sometimes it felt like a lifetime ago. Sometimes it felt like yesterday. Maria sat in her small office at Community Hope, looking at the photos on her desk. Sophia, now 12, smiling in her soccer uniform. David, 17, in his cap and gown from his high school graduation last month. She still couldn't believe how much had changed. How much they'd all changed. Her office wasn't fancy. Just a desk, a filing cabinet, some chairs for the families she met with, but it was hers. And every morning when she walked through that door, she felt grateful. Not just for the job, but for the path that had led her here. There was a knock on her door. "Come in," Maria called out. A young woman stepped inside, looking nervous. She was probably in her early 20s, wearing clothes that had seen better days, carrying a baby on her hip. "Hi, are you Maria? They told me at the front desk you could help me." Maria smiled warmly and gestured to a chair. "Yes, please sit down." "What's your name?" "I'm Ashley, and this is my son, Marcus. He's 8 months old." The baby looked up at Maria with big, curious eyes. "He's beautiful," Maria said. "So tell me, Ashley, what brings you here today?" Over the next 30 minutes, Ashley told her story. She'd left an abusive relationship 3 months ago. She was staying at a shelter but needed to find work. She had her GED but no real job experience. She was scared and overwhelmed and didn't know where to start. Maria listened, really listened, the way she wished someone had listened to her years ago when she was struggling. When Ashley finished, Maria pulled out some forms and a notebook. "Okay, here's what we're going to do," Maria said. "First, we're going to get you enrolled in our job training program. We work with local businesses who are willing to hire people who need a second chance. Second, we're going to help you find childcare so you can work. And third, we're going to connect you with our legal aid partners who can help make sure you stay safe." Ashley's eyes filled with tears. "Really? You can do all that?" "We can and we will. You're not alone anymore, Ashley. That's what we're here for." After Ashley left, Maria sat back in her chair and thought about all the people she'd helped over the past 2 years. Dozens of families. Single moms like her. People who'd lost their jobs. Kids who needed after-school programs. Every single one of them had a story. Every single one of them deserved a chance. This job had given her purpose in a way she'd never expected. Yes, the money was better. Yes, having health insurance and not working herself to exhaustion was amazing. But the real gift was being able to help people the way she'd once needed help. Her phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. "Mom, don't forget you're picking me up from practice at 5. Love you." Maria smiled. She actually had time to pick her daughter up from soccer practice now. She had time to help David with his college applications. She had time to breathe. The phone rang. It was Carol, her boss. "Maria, do you have a minute? There's someone here who'd like to talk to you." "Sure, send them over." A few minutes later, there was another knock. Maria looked up and was surprised to see Robert Chen standing in her doorway. He looked older than she remembered. More tired. But there was something different in his eyes. Something softer. "Mr. Chen," Maria said, standing up. "This is unexpected." "I hope it's okay that I came by," Robert said. "I called ahead and spoke to Carol. She said you might have a few minutes." "Of course. Please, sit down." Robert sat across from her, looking uncomfortable. They'd only seen each other a handful of times since that night 2 years ago, usually at community events. Their conversations had been polite but brief. "I wanted to tell you something," Robert began, After everything that happened, after my whole life got turned upside down, I had to take a hard look at myself. It wasn't pretty. My wife almost left me. My daughter didn't want to talk to me. My business partners were furious. Maria listened quietly, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Robert continued, because it forced me to change. Really change. Linda and I started going to counseling. I started volunteering at a homeless shelter. I changed how I ran my business, how I treated my employees. He paused, looking down at his hands. I wanted you to know that what you did, returning that wallet, it didn't just change your life. It changed mine too. You held up a mirror and made me see who I'd become, someone I didn't like very much. I'm glad you made those changes, Maria said. That takes courage. I'm here because I want to make a donation to Community Hope. A significant one. Not to ease my conscience or to make myself feel better, but because I've seen the work you do here and it matters. You matter. He handed her an envelope. Inside was a check for $100,000. Maria's eyes widened. Robert, this is too much. It's not enough. It'll never be enough to make up for how I treated you, but maybe it can help you do more of what you're already doing. Help more people like that young woman I saw leaving your office. Give more families a second chance. Maria didn't know what to say. She looked at the check, then at Robert. Thank you. This will help a lot of people. Good. Robert stood up to leave, then paused. Can I ask you something? Do you ever regret it? Returning the wallet? Maria thought about it. Really thought about it. She thought about those first awful moments in his driveway, feeling small and accused. She thought about being late to work and almost losing her job. She thought about all the pain that had come from that one decision. Then she thought about where she was now. About Ashley and all the others she'd helped. About Sophia and David and the life they had now. About the person she'd proven herself to be, not just to others but to herself. No, she said finally. I don't regret it. Not for a second, Robert nodded slowly. I didn't think so. That's what makes you who you are. He reached out his hand and Maria shook it. Thank you, Maria. For everything. After he left, Maria sat at her desk for a long time, thinking about the strange journey that had brought her here. She'd been so close to giving up that night. So close to believing that being good didn't matter, that the world didn't care about people like her. But she'd been wrong. The world did care. Sometimes it just took a while to show it. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Sophia. Mom, practice ends in 20 minutes. Are you coming? Maria laughed and grabbed her keys. Yes, she was coming. She was always coming now. Because she had the time. She had the means. She had a life that allowed her to be there for the people she loved. As she walked out of the building into the afternoon sunshine, Maria thought about all the people she'd meet tomorrow. All the families she'd help. All the lives she'd touch just by doing what she did every day. That wallet in the parking lot had changed everything, but not because of the money inside it. Because of the choice she'd made. The choice to be honest when dishonesty would have been easier. The choice to be kind when the world wasn't always kind back. She'd returned a wallet full of cash, and in return, she'd gotten something far more valuable. She'd gotten proof that who you are matters, that your choices matter, that doing the right thing even when it costs you something is always worth it in the end. And that was a lesson worth more than all the money in the world.